the three refuges. Buddham saranam gacchami.
Buddham saranam gacchami.
Dhammam saranam gacchami.
Dhammam saranam gacchami.
Sangham saranam gacchami.
Sangham saranam gacchami.
Good morning and welcome to you all. Thank you so much for being here today. I hope you all had a wonderful day of gratitude and filled your bellies. It's always a good thing to be together, and we are very happy that we're gathered here today on this special day we call in our tradition Hoonko, a day of thanksgiving to our lineage founder, Shin Buddhist founder, Shinran Shonin. So we'll be learning all about Shinran's wonderful contributions to the Shin Buddhist path, specifically the Shoshinge that we chant every time at our Sunday services. So we'll be delving more into that. So as we chant the Shoshinge this morning, which is this little book in the seat back pocket in front of you or behind you, please chant in vertical columns from right to left. And the pronunciations are fairly easy, kind of like Spanish. And so these are verses of true faith. These are the teachings of Shinran Shonin, the seven masters of our lineage. So as we're chanting the Shoshinge, you're welcome to come up and offer incense and gratitude to the infinite wisdom and compassion of the universe. We call that Amida Buddha. So thank you very much, and we will begin. Shoshinge. Kimyo muryo junyorai.
Namu fukashigi-ko hozobo-sai-ni-ji Zaisei-ji-zai obusho Token-shobu-jodo-in Kokudo-nin-den Shizen-maku Konryu-mujo-shushogan Choho-kei-u-dai-gu-zei Goko-shi-yui-shi-shoju Jusei-myosho-monji-po Fuho-muryo-muhen-ko Muge-mutai-ko-en-no Shoujo-kangi-chi-e-ko Fudanan-shi-mushoko Chonichi-ga-ko-shojin-sei Isai-gunjo-mukosho 本願明後症状後死心信行願に因上等学章大涅槃非死滅の願成就如来所意公衆性唯性弥陀本願会五辱悪事群上会往生如来如実言の法一年喜愛心普段本の特涅槃本性逆法再永入妙種死入海一味聖種信仰上昇後意の水波無明安頓内心臓死運無上不信じ信心天非尿に幸福運無運無死下妙無安逆心謙虚大狂気即応超税後悪臭一切全幕本部人門心如来偶税願文言広大小芸者税に妙踏んだりけ弥陀部本願念部邪見教魔なく修上信行十字人に難中死難昔インド最天子論芸中華自治域史こそ現代諸公聖書意妙如来本税大き釈迦如来両合戦一種五妙難天軸流樹大事出頭性失の財派有無権先税大乗無情報召喚議事小安楽賢治難行六六信行異行指導楽億年弥陀部本願次年即時入筆上唯の上昇如来語王法大悲偶税音天神菩薩増論性奇妙無下公如来永寿たら謙信寺高専王朝大聖願こういう本願力栄光異道群上昇維新非入空毒大崩壊筆脈入大永寿宗特使蓮華造世界即昇信用法昇進有望の人間人図入賞自由自由芸本自論乱両天使上皇乱勝菩薩来三蔵ルシ十上教本性専業気楽法天神菩薩論中芸報道因果健税願王言栄光有他力少女死因唯信心惑前本部新人法承知承持即涅槃非死無量光明道小雨修上開復系同社継承道難所唯妙浄土活入万全自力変言宗円満特合感染症三不三心軽音言増魔法明道非因異生造悪知偶税思安妖怪称妙化全道独妙武将意公愛上三陽逆悪公明明後家二年開入本願大智慧行者小樹金剛心狂気一年総合 用意大東逆三人即将法書四上楽謙信公開一大教偏気安養家に祭先祖終身反戦人法慶二度小弁流極十悪人唯勝負下薬剤非正集中煩悩証言水不見大非無見上昇が本次元空妙仏教連民全幕本部人新宗教書後編集戦弱本願具悪性現来生じ臨伝芸慶地義上位少子即入弱上無意楽一心寺に納入苦境大自修士と上妻無変極辱悪同族自修愚道心唯過信しおそせナムアミダアブナムアミダアブナムアミダアブナムアミダブナムアミダアブナミダジョブのこの方は今に自己を得たまえり方針の法理言ぬきわもな悪せの妙を照らすなり栄光願にしくどく平等聖祭同菩提心往生安らほナマンダブナマンダブナマンダブナマンダブナマンダブ We would like to invite the children to go with Reverend Shelley to Haroma Hall for Dharma School. We will sing them out with Let the Buddha Walk With You. Let the Buddha walk with you. Let the Buddha walk with you. Let the Buddha walk, just walk. Let the Buddha walk with you. Let the Buddha walk with you. Let the Buddha walk with you. Let the Buddha walk, just walk. Let the Buddha walk with you. Let the Buddha walk with you. Let the Buddha walk with you. Let the Buddha walk, just walk. Let the Buddha walk with you. They were a little slow, so. Well, we're happy to see all of you this morning. Welcome, welcome. It's good to be gathered here today. It's a busy time of year for all of us. This week's been filled with all kinds of things between winter repairs that it seemed like a warm day so we could paint really quick and other things. We had an impromptu wedding yesterday. That was a bit of a surprise, but wonderful, exciting. The couple came, and then they had 25 guests online. So they were all streaming from Idaho and Southern California and stuff. So, and then, of course, the big feast is always jumbles up this week. I never know how many days there are in this week because the feast seems like it's a Saturday or a weekend, but that's Thursday, and then I got to work one more day that week, and I get so confused. And then when Saturday rolls around, I have no idea what day it is. So. We've all been scurrying around in our own ways. Some people did enjoy shopping the day before yesterday, I would point out, which is good. But we are here now, together, a calm, peaceful place. We can hear some Dharma. So, this, as Reverend Shelley mentioned, is our Hoonko celebration service. A service of thanksgiving. You may be surprised that we have a traditional Thanksgiving service every November. And what would a Buddhist tradition from Japan know about pilgrims and Indians and turkeys? Seems unlikely. We Shin Buddhists have held this service for about 750 years. So we've got some people trying to date the Plymouth Rock thing. Nothing to do with that. It is a service in thanksgiving of Shinran Shonin, our lineage founder. He is the gentleman behind me with the big white tassels. On the occasion, this is the occasion of his passing into the Pure Land. The Pure Land of Amida Buddha, on the 28th day of the 11th month of the year 1262 of the Common Era. So this is our Hoonko service. Hoonko means, Hoon means returning in gratitude, and ko is gathering. So it's a gathering in gratitude to Shinran Shonin. No turkeys involved. It is an important tribute to Shinran, and we'll talk about the Shoshinge that we just chanted together. The poem is his message to us, wherever we are. And it can touch that place where we are in time and space, and kind of we come in sync with Shinran Shonin when we chant it. In a way, we really coexist with him, because as he wrote it, I'm certain that he chanted it and then fixed this part and fixed that part. In Kyoto, in a fire vault that temples in Japan have fire vaults because they burn down every 100 years or something like that. And in one of the vaults, there was this handwritten manuscript, and somebody was looking at it and thought, well, this is funny. The calligraphy looks just like the calligraphy at the Tadaka temple, and it was a Nembutsu scroll like this that was calligraphied by Shinran, and they thought, well, that's kind of interesting. And it turned out it was the original. Yeah, and in the original, it's all on rice paper in kind of scroll rolled up fashion, but it's cut up and glued, so when he didn't like the sound of something in the Shoshinge, he fixed it. So he cut and pasted it. Cut out the part he didn't like, pasted in some blank paper, and then wrote in a better, more the right number of syllables or whatever like that. So he worked on this poem for a long time, carefully, and when we chant it, we're in sync with what he was feeling or what it sounded like to him, even if we don't know the words that much. But the thing about not knowing the words, sometimes we need to really dig in and understand. So that's what we will do today. Kind of a deep dive into a wonderful translation that was translated by Ruth Tabra, who was a Shinshu member in Hawaii in the previous century. While we listen to the readers, there'll be 3 readers, we can find some little keys that sort of unlock things about the Shoshinge that we didn't experience before. That will be wonderful. We can find a joyful state of mind that totally trusts in the Dharma, an awareness of the nature of the Dharma, and a path to freedom, to nirvana, to release. In the Shoshinge, Shinran knew that we all had troubles, and that maybe sometimes we're drowning, in a way, in the difficulties of life as we experience it. He offers us a kind of life preserver, the Nembutsu, this chant here, Namu Amida Butsu, bringing the Buddha Amida to mind. When I say mind, everybody thinks, well, why isn't he pointing to his head? But it turns out in Japanese, kokoro is heart-mind. They are connected, so they're connected. The name of our chant is actually the Shoshin Nembutsuge. So we just say Shoshinge for short. The Gata on True Faith in the Nembutsu. The title has 3 parts. I'm looking for my copy, and I don't really see it. Has it disappeared? I'm afraid it's been tidied up. Jimmy, could I trouble you for a copy just in case I need to wave it around or, find a page? And thank you very much. So the title has 3 characters, and Shoshin means right faith, and that has to do with our shinjin, our true and trusting in the wisdom and compassion of the universe. Nembutsu means bringing the Buddha to mind, and ge is short for gata, or verse in Sanskrit. Some people translate it as hymn, but that doesn't really help me. It sort of drags me down, so I don't say that. Faith and Nembutsu are very important ideas in our Shin Buddhism. And then when we start looking at the Shoshinge, you may notice when we're chanting, it shifts gears. One place is we completely stop and then we start again, so that's a clear break point. But there's three basic pieces here. The first part is what we would call the Amida section, Shinran's description of the Buddha Amida and how the Buddha Amida was enlightened, and that includes the vows of the Bodhisattva who became Amida Buddha. So he was called Dharmakara before, and then it's interesting in Buddhism they keep changing our names all the time. When I was a lay Buddhist, I had a name for that, my name then, and then when I became a priest, I got a new name. Shaku Shunin is my new name, and then if you get a bigger responsibility or something like that, they give you a big scroll and a new name. It's confusing for historians in particular because the same person will have 4 different names. So, don't know how I got onto that, but anyway, still. Amida section, then the Dharma teachers section. That part goes over these 7 teachers that are behind me on the wall. So each one of our lineage teachers offered some contribution to flowing this idea of Shin Buddhism, or the idea of Amida Buddha, the idea of Pure Land Buddhism onward, and so they're counted as our lineage teachers. Many certainly Japanese Buddhist lineages have this thing called a lineage chant. So this part of the Shoshinge does that. It says, who are our teachers, all the way back to India. And then the last bit is kind of the ending, really. And that brings us from the kind of ancient time of Amida Buddha. Those 3 scrolls along the wall are story of Amida Buddha there, and then through these teachers here behind me to right now. So at the ending part, it brings us to this moment. What is the meaning of all this for us right now? The last bit. Now, sometimes people are a little bit uncomfortable chanting the Shoshinge at first. Some of us have been chanting it for a while, and we kind of gotten into a bunch of bad habits, but we're comfortable with it. And often people will ask, why do we chant it? I'm getting some peppermint to keep me from coughing. So, why do we chant it? Our tradition of chanting sutras dates back to the earliest times in India. Really, it was before writing. I mean, characters existed, but you had to have a scribe and all this stuff to write something. So only the super fancy people wrote anything. Most folks relied on memorizing. And in religious traditions in India, that memorization was kind of a sacred way of holding the ideas, because they weren't put on a piece of paper and ink. That's not that sacred. When you hold something in human beings, from generation to generation to generation, that in the Indian tradition is a more sacred way of holding it. Sutra is a Sanskrit word that means thread. So you can imagine when you have a sermon or whatever, or maybe not this one, but most sermons have sort of a logical thread that threads through them that you can follow, and like that. So we follow that thread of Dharma through each sutra. Usually in Buddhism, we hold the word sutra for Dharma talks given by Shakyamuni Buddha or his immediate students. About 85% of them are from Shakyamuni, and then the other ones are from his immediate students, offered teachings that have been memorized in this way. And then eventually we broke down and wrote them down on paper or palm leaves initially. So, Shakyamuni Buddha, the Buddha was enlightened at about the age of 35. And he'd been a prince before, and he gave that up, and he studied with religious teachers. And at 35, he reached this wonderful transformational experience. That was around the year 528 of the Common Era, which would have been about 100 years before Plato wrote the Republic. So if you're into Greek history, that gives you a place in time when that occurred. It was a long time ago. For the rest of life, the Buddha traveled and taught the Dharma. He taught how he saw things. He taught methods and practices that help us go from kind of being overly self-centered to realizing that we can open to the universe around us. So that was his teaching as he matured. He saw that we suffer, but we don't have to. So what do we do? And by following the Buddha's Dharma, all of us can reach that same freedom that he reached, and to reach peace and joyful state. You notice in the Buddha statues and everything, he's just sort of a gentle smile. He's never silly with a smile and never frowning, but always just sort of, you know. We could reach that state and not struggle the way we do. So, how he did that was to somehow see reality the way it really is, as opposed to conditioned by our I, me, myself. So, let's pause now and listen to some of the translation of the Shoshinge that start to give us a feeling of how Shinran saw things. So, the first reading will be offered by Susan. Thank you.
Good morning. Shoshinge, Shinran's Song of the Nembutsu, written by Shinran Shonin in about 1250 CE. How inconceivable! Throughout the universe, the ceaseless, boundless activity of Namu Amida Butsu awakens me to what is real and true. This is my reliance, my refuge, my wholehearted trust. Namu Amida Butsu is the call of the vow made by Amida, the Buddha of immeasurable light and life. When he was Dharmakara, a bodhisattva who, coming into the presence of the great teacher, Lokesvara Rajabuddha, was enabled to see the invisible and yet visible to the mind's eye, the Buddha fields of all the Buddhas and how they became so. To establish such a realm for all beings, whether good or evil, a realm without discrimination or condition, was Dharmakara's deep yearning, his great vow. He spent 5 kalpas, a time and effort beyond comprehension, fulfilling this most excellent and rare vow. This dynamic vow, the primal vow, the original vow, by which the name conveys enlightenment to all. Throughout the universe, this name resounds. This vow continues like light, unbounded by space or time. Without hindrance, needless of cause or condition, illuminating our greed, our anger, our blind and calculating foolishness. Inconceivably, just as I am, this all-embracing vow enables me to become a Buddha. Its light, in all its many facets, stronger than the light of the moon, stronger by far than the light of the sun, illuminates even the tiny particle of dust in the countless worlds of the universe, shining equally on all. The Nembutsu of Amida's great vow is the dynamic cause for my birth into the realm of enlightened beings, the Jodo, the Pure Land. Because of the vow, my mind of true and trusting, my Shinjin, is ensured, as is my ultimate enlightenment, identical with that of Amida's, resulting in the great, complete nirvana. Sakyamuni Buddha was born into this world with the sole mission of teaching the treasure devotion of Amida's vow, to rescue we who constantly pollute our streams of birth and death. Please listen to the truth of Sakyamuni's message. The mind of true and trusting, Shinjin, arises from my awakening to the reality of Amida's great vow. No need to sever evil passions to reach nirvana. Ordinary people, holy monks, unbelievers, we who may break the 5 precepts, all of us equally, just as we are, though like various unclean rivers, become of one taste on entering the ocean of the vow.
Thank you, Susan. It's quite beautiful, the way he's written it, the way he sees it. Amida Buddha made these 48 specific vows to help sentient beings on the path to enlightenment. Amida Buddha is mentioned in about 110 of Shakyamuni Buddha's sutras in one way or another. It's clear from the Shoshinge that our focus, as given from Shinran, is Amida Buddha. And of those 110 sutras, 3 of them are very important, and those are the foundation, the source of most of what Shinran taught. They're specifically about Amida Buddha, this vow that we're talking about, to aid all sentient beings, and the Buddha field that he manifested to make that possible. We call it the Pure Land in the translated form. The Sanskrit word for it is Buddhakshetra, which means Buddha field. So whether it's a field like an energy field, that makes more sense than a planet or a place kind of feeling. So, as Shinran Shonin wrote, and Susan just read, the ultimate intention of the Buddha's teaching was to communicate, to teach, and clarify this primal vow, this basic vow that exists in the universe around us, the Hongan of Amida Buddha, the compassionate, wise source that helps us all. What is the primal vow, you might ask? The fundamental and universal aspiration that compassionately sustains all beings. This vow arises from the limitless wisdom and compassion of Amida Buddha. It embraces every sentient being. It leads to enlightenment regardless of karmic condition. The Shoshinge we chant is filled with ideas that come from these 3 Pure Land Sutras, from the writings of and commentaries on those sutras from the teachers that are behind me, and from the ideas of Shinran Shonin, the way that he connected things together after he studied on the famous monastery near Kyoto, Mount Hiei it's called, where everybody important went and studied there. And so these chants lead us to become aware of the virtue of Amida Buddha. And during the incense offering, we hear those words of the sutra in kind of the harmonious oneness of the chant. When we're all chanting together, it's a very different experience. It's wonderful. Individual voices woven into a unity. Our chanting becomes an expression of deep gratitude and in appreciation for all these teachers and their kindness for sharing their thoughts with us. So if we look at our Shoshinge book, our service is really quite traditional. When Reverend Shelley and I study in Japan or visit in Japan, the services follow the same basic pattern. They always begin with chanting the Shoshinge and offering incense. If you notice, before the chant, Reverend Shelley and I raised the service book up in this way to our forehead, kind of a gesture of honor and appreciation, gratitude for receiving the teaching. It's like, this is such a wonderful gift. Thank you so much. That's what that means. We start the chant with ringing the bell. In the chanting book, you may notice a black dot a couple black dots here and there, but various on the first page. Those are the bell cues. There's 2 at the beginning and 1 at the end. That's sort of how we know if it's beginning or ending. The pitch is usually set by the lead chanter, who chants the first line of the Shoshinge, and then we all join in. I always enjoy that part. You know, there's that lone voice, and then everyone fills in. That's really beautiful. There's a lot of listening involved in chanting. When we chant together, we're aware of all the other voices, and that's important. So we can kind of tune in to that unity feeling and not launch off on our own thing. Americans generally like to launch off on their own thing, so this is a little bit different that way, but it's good too. Now, sometimes people are unsure about just how to pronounce the sounds or the words of the Shoshinge, and it can be confusing. Reverend Shelley pointed out that it's the book's bound on the opposite side, and we go in vertical columns this way, which is that's new and different if you don't read Japanese magazines. Also, even if you look at any page, there are 4 different texts present. So there's the kanji characters, these that we see on the scroll, the Chinese characters, and only a few of us can read those. Then there are these little characters next to them that look sort of similar, but they're more simple. Those are hiragana. Those are phonetic letters, syllables for the Japanese. So if a Japanese person doesn't know this particular character, and actually the Shoshinge uses very ancient Chinese characters that most Japanese people don't really know unless they are studied religion and that kind of a thing. So they rely on those phonetic characters, the hiragana, to pronounce it correctly. But that doesn't help most of us, because most of us don't know hiragana. So we added the romaji, the Roman letters, next to it to give us the idea of the sound. And then the last piece of notation, trying to find one well, it's there on each one. It's just kind of a straight line, and basically it goes horizontally, or maybe it goes up, or goes down, or maybe there's 3 little lines and 1 big line going down. Those are kind of like intonation marks. They're a system of conveying the way we modulate the tone of our voice when we chant it. In the wasans, the last part, these little songs in the back, they're very much more complicated. The regular Shoshinge, it is either even, or it goes up, or goes down. That's pretty easy. But when you get into the wasans, I think I made a note to myself to look on page 30 is a good example. The last line on page 30, there's one where it goes bell, and that's one of the more complicated things. When we're first learning, if you come to chanting on Tuesday at 6, everyone's welcome to come. It's a wonderful way to learn about the Dharma and share in this kind of unity that's woven by the chant. We work on this kinds of stuff. The intonation, the easiest thing to do with the intonation, if you're just starting out, instead of going she, you just say she until I go to the next thing, and then it's easy. And then over time, you kind of pick it up. So that's the trick to learning it. The last one, well, the romaji, the Roman letters, don't really require much explanation. We recognize the Romans' letters. But the sounds that they make, a, I, U, A, O, are the only sounds. They don't make any other sounds. So, in English, you can have one letter and it can make 5 different sounds. Fortunately, the way Japanese works, that we wouldn't do that. And so it's just a, I, U, A, O. Those are the only vowel sounds in the Shoshinge. So let's just say that together. A, I, U, A, O. Okay. Americans like sticking two vowel sounds together, and particularly in the South, they'll start sticking three sounds together. Oh, yow. And the Japanese, they don't do that. It's just ko. Ko is ko. It's not ko or something like that. So, where did I go with that? The first, as an example, Kimyo muryo junyorai. That's the first line. So that's how we chant the first line. It means I take refuge in the Buddha of immeasurable life. So we associate life with compassion in this sense. So let's try another reading. Christina, could you share the second part with us?
Sho Shinge, Shinran Song of the Nembutsu, Part 2. To receive and be taken in by Amida's great compassion is to be perpetually transformed, embraced, protected by its light. Yet, while my inner darkness is thus broken, my cloudy mists of anger, hatred, and desire continue to obscure Sinjin's bright sky. Though Sinjin, filtered in the same way as sunlight through mist and cloud, continues to cast light into the darkness below. To receive this Sinjin is to know great joy. Simultaneously, I am emancipated from the limbo of a world without Dharma. Of all of us, good and evil together, who hear and awaken to Amida's great vow, the Buddha says, we are persons of Sinjin. Those who comprehend this completely are like a white lotus blooming. Yet, having received this mind of true and trusting this Sinjin, to neither doubt nor question it, to retain it, to not forget that the Nembutsu of Amida's great vow is directed to all sentient beings, including arrogant persons and those of wrong views, is the most difficult of all the difficulties. The great Dharma teachers of ancient India, China, and Japan make clear Shakyamuni's emphasis that when compared with Amida Buddha's pure activity, we sentient beings are calculating and defiled. Shakyamuni's teachings disclose to us our inconceivable endowment, universal enlightenment made possible through Amida's great vow. In a dark talk on Mount Lanka, Shakyamuni talked about Ruju, a bodhisattva of southern India, who later appeared in this world to destroy misleading views of being and non-being. Ruju proclaimed the great Dharma of the Mahayana and identified for us the joyous stage of birth in the Pure Land. He described this Pure Land way like the ease of an ocean voyage, whereas the way of difficult practices is like traveling a rough and dangerous path on foot. Once we entrust to the vessel of Amida's vow, at that instant, says Ryuju, our birth in the Pure Land is assured. To fully express our gratitude for this, let us utter Amida Buddha's name always. The Pure Land treatise, Joduran, compiled by the Bodhisattva Tenjin in India, urges us to rely on the Tathagata of unhindered light, Amida, through the larger Pure Land Sutra, which makes clear the truth of Amida's 18th vow, the vow which gives to each and every one of us the mind of true and trusting Shinjin, and the certain eventuality of our joining the great company of bodhisattvas in the treasure ocean of Namu Amida Butsu at the very moment of our entrusting. Says Seishin, we are able to see the truth of things as they are, of suchness, and instantaneously we become an avenue for the wisdom and compassion of the Buddha. This being so, though we can now burst free from the thicket of our passions, having become this avenue of wisdom and compassion, in this transformed state, we freely plunge back into the garden of birth and death. The cause resulting in all this is true and trusting alone, Shinjin. The teaching of Donran, a bodhisattva in China, before whom the benevolent Buddhist emperor Wu Ti always bowed his head, Donran had received Chinese translations of the Pure Land Sutras and Seishin's writings from the sage Bodhiruchi. Turning to these teachings, Donran burned his Taoist texts. His own writings say that when we ordinary foolish beings realize the mind of true entrusting, the mind of Shinjin, though we still wander in samsara, the world of birth and death, at the same time, we are shown nirvana, the world of the Buddha, the world of things as they are, of that which is real and true.
When we realize true and trusting, even if we still wander around in samsara, we see this world of the Buddha open to us when we chant, when we share this Nembutsu experience, when we share the Shoshinge of Shinran Shonin. Why is it important that we chant? We make these sounds ourselves in exactly the same way the teachers before us did. We chant about this world, the world of things as they really are. We chant of that which is real and true and joyful. And that happens on many levels. So we don't have to think about it. We can just chant. becomes a kind of meditation, very effective. The harmonic energy of the chant, it stimulates the chakras of the body. The chakras are energetic focal points of energy in our body. And we chant, we feel our heart rate stabilize, our blood pressure reduces, our circulation improves, and endorphins, the body sort of painkillers, natural painkillers, are released in chanting. They studied this in some university somewhere. So I think that's kind of neat that I enjoy chanting, but then somebody says, well, you know, there's a good reason that you're enjoying chanting. It does very positive things for your being. Our chanting naturally embodies deep breathing, and that releases, you know, the emotional toxins of our body. That's why we enjoy it. Chanting is a sort of natural therapeutic process, a cleansing of our consciousness and letting go of any unfortunate residue that may be retained from the week's trials. When chanting, we are self-aware. If we have a limitation, like perhaps we are tone deaf, we carefully chant softly so as not to disturb the other beings. In chanting, we experience our place in the world. And this can be difficult, it can be joyful. It depends on our honesty and self-reflection. All Buddhist practices aid in self-reflection. We can see the self in them. This helps us loosen our grip on selfishness and open us to the true nature of all things, to be empty of separateness, to be interwoven. Chanting is meditation without the temptation towards self-power. Sometimes if we meditate for 4 hours straight, we think, wow, I meditated for 4 hours straight. Well, unfortunately, that's a little bit of an indulgence in a selfish thought. So when we chant, after we chant, often what we experience is, wow, what part of this wonderful energy? You know, that's a subtle difference, but important. That's one part of why we chant the Shoshinge. Let's go back and experience the last piece. Chris, could you offer that for us? Oh, there you are.
Shoshinge, Shinran Song of the Nembutsu, Part 3. In this true and real wisdom of Amida's realm, all we sentient beings, everything that exists, totally and equally become one. The great teacher Doshaku showed us the difficulty of the path of self-power practices. He clarified that for we ordinary men and women, the way to Buddhahood is the Pure Land path of entrusting to the wise and compassionate power of the vow. Even millions of self-power practices are useless. Doshaku urges the single practice of saying the name Namu Amida Butsu, from which arises the uncalculated directness, the single focus, and the constancy of the mind of true entrusting. The mind of Shinjin. Doshaku explains that this is the pure mind, which is in total contrast to our mind of doubt. At any time, in any age, we who happen to encounter the attraction of the great compassion of the vow, though throughout our lives we create nothing but evil, will reach the Pure Land and the final stage, enlightenment. It is Zendo alone who teaches us the Buddha's true meaning in disclosing that for we who break the 5 precepts, we who constantly sully our streams of birth and death, as we come to hear the vow, Amida's light and name manifest cause and condition for our entry into its great wisdom ocean. This, we Nembutsu followers received Shinjin's diamond-like mind. In the joy of this single moment, when we encounter the wisdom of the Buddha, exactly as Queen Vaidehi, we simultaneously receive Shinjin's 3 benefits: a joyful mind that totally entrusts in the vow, an awareness of the nature of the Dharma, and the issuance of nirvana. In Genshin, on Mount Hiei in Japan, widely explored all of Shakyamuni's teachings, and coming to those of the Pure Land, Genshin recommended this path to us all. However, he makes clear to us a distinction between the shallowness of self-power Nembutsu, which leads only to the borders of the Pure Land, leaving us at a way station, with the depth of the true Nembutsu that assures us entry into the heart of Amida's realm. True Nembutsu can be uttered by the lowest of the low. Amida is always pursuing them, drawing them in. Such a one am I, Gensin professes. Even though I am blinded by the anguish of my passions, great compassion is always without interruption, tirelessly illuminating me. The great Buddhist teacher Genku, out of compassion for all beings, established the true way of Nembutsu teaching in Japan. He opened to ordinary persons everywhere the gate of Amida's 18th vow. Our turbulent, endless cycle of birth and death, going and returning, is due to our mind of doubt, said Genku. But in the Nembutsu, when we receive the decisiveness of the mind of Shinjin, the mind of true and trusting, immediately, without fail, we are assured of entering Nirvana's peaceful world. Thus, these bodhisattvas and great teachers of India, China, and Japan have shown us the meaning of the larger Pure Land Sutra, the meaning of the name and the vow, which liberates innumerable beings. Those of us who are the most defiled and calculating, those of us who are hopeless. Their teachings speak to us directly, so that now, in this present moment, and always throughout our lives, we who are priests, we who are lay people, being of one same mind together, in abandoning all superstitions, abandoning self-power and petitionary practices, need believe only in this true Nembutsu way.
Thank you, Chris. Hopefully you noticed the pictures of the teachers behind me. Each of them is mentioned in the Shoshinge, and their contribution was there. So usually there are no illustrations in most adult books, but in this case we could look at the picture and at least know who that is. Who's Genku? Oh, he's that one. Okay, yeah. I think actually, I'll attempt to do this without falling. Yeah, Genku, his robe is white, so apparently his is new because mine's so old it's turned black. But this is almost the same. Yeah, that's the time that our uniform was invented, sort of. We can follow along when we chant. When we hear these names up here, we know we're talking about their contribution, even if we don't experience the details of the words. Hearing the translation is wonderful. It's amazing. The section ends with a profound promise. People are always proud of our strength, right? We think, and people tell us often, that we have to fight for this and we have to fight for that. So that makes it so we want to win all the time. We might think that we can't fail, that if we fail, we're lost. But when fighting is done, either we win or we lose. Those self-centered, calculating dreams kind of dissolve. They're just parts of the delusion of self, of self-power. Then we have to change. And finding the Nembutsu, we can remember not to give up. We have friends, and we're okay, just as we are. That's what the promise at the end there said. We can learn the meaning of the Shoshinge, of the name, and Namu Amida Butsu, and the great vow, and these free sentient beings from suffering. Amida Buddha is there for those who have made mistakes, maybe many mistakes in our lives, and for those of us who maybe calculate about things a little too much, or who we have lost hope in some way. So thanks to Shinran Shonin at Hoonko, his teaching speaks directly to us through the Shoshinge. As we chant, we even hear his words in our own voice. Right now, in this moment, and always after this, everyone, we are part of the same mind together. We can abandon all dogmas and beliefs and rules and give up self-power practices, give up asking for things to be better. All we need to do is follow this Nembutsu way. Some come to the temple with problems. What the Shoshinge says to you is, don't give up. Understand that you have all of us. The Sangha and all of Buddhism is here for you. This Nembutsu way is very simple. Amida Buddha manifested a place where you belong, where you can be at rest. Shinran knew that you worry about things too much. You don't need to worry. And the Shoshinge teaches that it's going to be all right. You can fall back on the Dharma. Please don't give up. You don't need to be ashamed in any way. You're okay, just as you are. Amida Buddha knows that it's never easy for you, and that is why Amida reaches out to all sentient beings, especially those who struggle. So, this is a place where you belong, where we are nurtured and supported, where we can live in gratitude and compassion and joy. There on the altar is Amida Buddha offering boundless wisdom and compassion to us all. Look at that altar and feel supported. You are held, never to be let go. Be of light heart. Feel the warmth of being cared for by the vastness of a wise and compassionate universe. Let's share the blessing the universe wishes for each of you. May you be happy. May you be free from harm. May you receive boundless compassion. And may peace and harmony fill your heart. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. We usually finish our service by sharing our Reno Buddhist Center theme song selected by dear Reverend Alicia. So if you would stand, it's on page 49 of the service book, and we'll sing together. no gathering at a temple would be complete without announcements, right? I would point your attention to these many written announcements here, different activities that are available through the week at our center, particularly chanting on Tuesday. If we've kind of dug into the Shoshinge and we've experienced, some of you are new and you've experienced a marathon of learning about the Shoshinge. So come to that and we can practice and get comfortable with it, because it's really great once you feel that sense of comfort. The only other important announcement, two more announcements, and that's it, I promise. Three more, only four, no, just kidding. We have a membership information meeting immediately following the service downstairs in the Seishi room. You can get a cup of tea and a cookie and then go there. Reverend Shelley will be there, and she'll explain about how people can become members of our temple and support it in many different ways. So if you're interested or just curious about how people become members of the temple, please come to that meeting. My last, not announcement, but it's a expression of gratitude. In the last Dharma talk, I talked about if people could, people give generously to the temple. It keeps everything running. There's no source of income for the temple other than people putting donations in the box or using Venmo or however they might do it. And I just wanted to say thank you very much for responding to that request, because the cold winter is coming, so we need to kind of make a little extra donation in lieu of heat, or to support the heat of the temple is wonderful. Yeah, okay. Thank you so much. Oh, and now the fourth announcement. I promise not to make it, so Christina will make the fourth announcement. Sing out, Louise.
We have finished the Pure Land Sutra. I'd say thank you, Jesus, but I don't know. Anyway, we're starting a wonderful new book called Buddha's Brain. It's a much easier read than the Pure Land Sutra. So, and there's not as much double negatives or
Right, the ancient wording of the sutras is not present. It's a nice book.
language you can understand. So there you go. Please come join us on Wednesday nights at 6.
At 6 o'clock? Yeah. Thank you.